In a small neighborhood of Berkeley, San Francisco, there is a cozy library, a quiet place where people seek knowledge and inspiration. There is a special atmosphere here. The rustling of pages, the slight smell of old books, and the muffled voices of visitors create a sense of tranquility. For the locals, it's not just a library, but an island of comfort where they come for answers and support. Naomi, a black woman in her 30s, works here as a librarian. Her smile and kindness have become a trademark of the place. Visitors love her not only for her attentive attitude, but also for her ability to recommend a book that literally changes the way they look at life. Naomi believes that even one paragraph from the right book can inspire change. Her love of books started as a child. She grew up in a large family where books were considered a luxury. Her mother, despite her hard work, found time to read to her children before bedtime. These stories opened up whole worlds to Naomi, making dreams come true, if only on the pages. One day, before she fell asleep, her mother said, "Remember, Naomi, a story can change destiny." These words became her motto for life. As she became an adult, Naomi decided she wanted to share that belief with others. She found a job at a library to help people discover the power of books. For her, every book is a window to a new world, and every new book a child reads is a step toward a greater future. She organizes literary circles for children, helps teenagers prepare for exams, and sometimes just listens to the stories of pensioners who come for companionship. Naomi believes that books and goodness can change the world. Each of her workdays begins with the thought, "Who will leave here today with hope?" Every morning, Naomi arrives at the library 15 minutes before it opens. She pulls books off the shelves that visitors have left behind, makes sure everything is in its place, and loads new additions into the database. Naomi likes order, but not enough to turn it into dogma. Her goal is for the library to be vibrant, accessible, and user-friendly for everyone. The first visitors are usually college students who come to borrow books for term papers or exams. Naomi already knows them by name and often suggests something interesting that isn't part of the required program. "If you like history, try this book," she says, holding out a leather-covered volume. Her advice rarely goes unheeded. By mid-afternoon, the library is filled with young mums with children. Naomi organizes story readings for them. She chooses brightly colored books with large print and shows the children the illustrations while her voice brings the characters to life. The children listen with genuine interest, and the parents are grateful for the opportunity to take their minds off everyday life. In the afternoon, Naomi teaches writing classes for teens. These classes are free of charge, and they attract a lot of students. She teaches them the basics of literacy and creative expression. Sometimes the lessons turn into discussions. The teens share their thoughts and stories, and Naomi listens attentively, offering advice or encouragement. In the evening, when the library is quieter, Naomi sits at her desk, pulls out a notebook, and writes. She is working on her collection of short stories, stories inspired by her experiences and the people she meets. Her dream is to one day publish a book that will help others believe in themselves. Naomi knows her life isn't always easy, but every day at the library reminds her that her work is important. Every word you read has the power to change something in a person, she thinks, as she closes the library at the end of the day. The day at the library was going along until the door suddenly opened with the melodious tinkling of a bell. A tall man, wearing a baseball cap, dark glasses, and a simple sports jacket appeared on the threshold. Naomi, standing behind the checkout counter, recognized him immediately. It was Steph Curry, the famous basketball player. She noticed a few students glancing around, trying to see if their eyesight was deceiving them. Steph walked up to the counter, took off his glasses and smiled politely. "Hello," he said. "They told me to come here, said you had a good selection of books. I'm looking for something about charity. maybe how to organize help for children. Naomi quickly got over her excitement. Her voice sounded calm, but she felt a tremor inside. "Welcome," she replied. "We have several of these books. Let me find something interesting for you." Naomi came out from behind the counter and led him to the section of books on leadership and social initiatives. She selected several and spoke briefly about each one. Steph listened intently, asking questions about the content and the authors. "You seem to know your business very well," he remarked. "I just love books and how they can change lives," Naomi replied, putting the last book on the table. The conversation moved smoothly to more personal topics. Steph shared how in his job he tries to help kids by using sports as a way to inspire them and allow them to grow. Naomi shared how the library has become a place where kids can feel important and find answers to their questions through reading. "It's amazing," Steph said. "You are doing an important thing. I love the way you approach your work." Naomi smiled. Her simple but sincere philosophy that small steps can lead to big changes resonated with the famous athlete. They talked for a while longer, until other patrons began to squint at their watches, reminding them that the library would be closing soon. Before leaving, Steph thanked Naomi for her help. He held a few of the selected books in his hands, but it wasn't the books that impressed him the most. It was Naomi, her dedication, kindness, and belief in the power of knowledge. The library was filled with people. Teenagers sat at tables with laptops. Parents picked out books for their children, and Mr. Randall, a regular visitor, nestled in the corner with a newspaper. The atmosphere was familiar until a quiet noise interrupted the conversation at the counter. Steph Curry, still in the library, was browsing through one of the books Naomi had recommended. He looked focused, jotting something down in his notebook. Naomi was sitting nearby, helping another customer, when Randall's harsh voice cut through the air. "Don't you think you could do more than just read books?" He turned loudly to Steph. "People like you are swimming in money, and the people around you are suffering." Steph broke away from his book and looked at the man calmly. Several students raised their heads, sensing the conflict brewing. "I understand your point of view, sir," Steph began. "But I believe that help is more than just money. It's time, effort, an opportunity to inspire others. I try to do what I can through my foundation and programs for children." Randall, undeterred, continued. "Those are all words. How will these inspirations of yours help those who don't know how to make it to the end of the month?" At this point, Naomi, who had been watching the conversation, could no longer remain silent. She stood up and confidently stepped closer. "I'm sorry, Mr. Randall, but you're not quite right," she said, looking him straight in the eye. "Steph doesn't just inspire, he acts. His foundation has opened dozens of sports fields for children, created scholarship programs, and helps many families. Sometimes people need more than money. They need to know they are believed in." The library came to a standstill. The young people sitting at the tables nodded approvingly. One of the students even said quietly, "She's right." A few older visitors, however, began to whisper. One of them remarked softly, "This is not the place for such talk." Steph thanked Naomi with a look, but it was obvious he was uncomfortable with the way the argument had erupted. Randall wrinkled his nose and muttered something about how his opinion couldn't be changed anyway. He picked up his paper and walked away defiantly, leaving a heavy silence behind him. "I'm sorry about that," Steph said quietly, turning to Naomi. "But thank you for saying it. You're incredibly brave." "It was the right thing to do," Naomi replied. "Here at the library, we teach not only reading, but also understanding what's important." The patrons who supported Naomi exchanged smiles and admiring glances, but there was still tension in the air from those who felt that the library should remain a neutral place, far from controversy. The next day, as soon as Naomi entered the library, she was immediately called into the office of the principal, Ms. Clark. The principal, a middle-aged woman with a sharp eye and stern manners, was already sitting at her desk when Naomi entered. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Naomi, I need to talk to you about yesterday's incident." Ms. Clark began with an icy calm. "Minus Mr. Randall called me. He is extremely unhappy. He feels that his opinion has been openly ridiculed, and he's threatened to cut off his donations to the library if it happens again." Naomi straightened up, trying to remain calm. "Ms. Clark, with respect, I couldn't remain silent. His words were unfair and, frankly, insulting. Steph Curry doesn't deserve to be treated like that. All I did was tell the truth." Ms. Clark frowned and put her hands on the table. "That's not our job, Naomi. We're a library. We provide access to books, not engage in arguments. Our institution must remain neutral so that every visitor feels comfortable." Naomi looked directly at the director. "I agree with that, but where is the line? If we see that someone is in the wrong, aren't we obligated to intervene? Isn't silence a form of consent?" Ms. Clark took a deep breath. "Naomi, you've done a lot of good for this library, but I can't ignore the consequences. An institution's reputation is more important than personal convictions. If you want to keep your position, you owe Mr. Randall an apology." Naomi froze. Silence hung in the room. She knew her decision would affect her future, but she had no doubts. "I can't apologize for telling the truth, Miss Clark," she said firmly. "It would be a betrayal of my principles." Ms. Clark stared at her for a few more seconds, then sighed heavily. "I'm very sorry, Naomi. In that case, I'm going to have to fire you. Your behavior yesterday was not up to our standards, and I can't risk the library's funding." Naomi nodded, suppressing the bitterness that had set in. She rose from her chair. "Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Ms. Clark, but I don't regret what I did." She walked out of the office with her head held high, though inside she was torn with mixed feelings. She had lost the job she loved, but she had stayed true to her principles. The day after she was fired, Naomi sat at home, still processing what had happened. Her feelings were mixed: pride in staying true to her principles and anxiety about the future. She had always loved her job at the library, and now she didn't know what would happen next. Suddenly, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Naomi answered it. "Hi, Naomi, it's Steph Curry. Do you have some time?" She heard a familiar voice. She was a little confused, but quickly pulled herself together. "Sure, Mr. Curry," she said. "What can I do for you?" "I'd rather talk to you in person. Do you mind if I drive up?" An hour later, a black SUV pulled up in front of her house. Steph got out of the car, smiling, and walked to the door. Naomi invited him in, still a little surprised. "Naomi, I found out you were fired from the library," he began, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Frankly, I was shocked. You didn't deserve it." "Thank you," Naomi said quietly, "but I have no regrets. I did what I thought was right." Steph looked at her carefully. "That's why I'm here. Yesterday, you showed how important the truth and your belief in change is. That impressed me. People with such principles are rare." Naomi nodded, not knowing what to say. "I'd like to offer you a job at my foundation," Steph continued. "We help children, especially those from low-income families. Your love of books and knowledge could be a great asset. You could organize educational programs, help children discover the world through reading." Naomi froze. Her heart beat faster. "Are you serious?" she asked incredulously. "Absolutely," Steph answered confidently. "You'll be able to do what you love, but on a bigger scale. I'm sure you'll inspire hundreds, maybe thousands of children." Naomi thought for a moment. Working with children, promoting education. It was all close to her heart. and this was a chance to do more than she could in the library. "I'll take it," she finally said, not hiding her smile. "Thank you for this chance." Steph smiled back. "No, Naomi. Thank you for your courage. This is just the beginning." And with those words, a new chapter in Naomi's life began. Her principles and belief in the power of knowledge led her to a path where she could impact the lives of children, helping them to dream and achieve more. Within weeks of talking to Steph, Naomi's life had completely changed. She was now working for his foundation, taking on projects she could only dream of before. Her first task was to set up a free library in a poor neighborhood in the city. It wasn't just a room full of books. She wanted it to be a place where children could feel safe, inspired, and supported. Naomi was personally involved in every step of the work. She helped select books, organized the space, and negotiated with local artists to decorate the walls with vibrant artwork. At the opening of the first library, she gave a short speech. "When I was a child, books were my window to the world," she said, looking out at the crowd. "I want every book here to be that window for you. Never be afraid to dream and learn. This is your path to more." The reaction of the children and their parents was touching. Several children immediately ran to the shelves to pick out their first books, and the parents thanked Naomi for her hard work and faith in their children. Her family was there too. Her mother couldn't hide her tears of pride, and her brother, who had once been skeptical of her dreams, was now actively helping. He took care of organizational matters, helped find sponsors, and even suggested ideas for events. "You always knew what you wanted, and I'm glad you didn't give up," he told Naomi after the event. "You're an inspiration not only to these kids, but to me as well." Naomi's work was not limited to the library alone. A few months later, she organized literary programs for teens, where she invited well-known authors and public figures. She taught the kids how to write their own stories and helped the best work get into local publications. Naomi felt she was now living the life she had always dreamed of. The results of her work were tangible. Not only were the children learning to read, but they were becoming more confident. Each child's smile, each question or story reminded Naomi that her fight for truth in the library was worth it. Her family continued to support her every step of the way, and Steph's foundation provided more and more opportunities for her ideas. Naomi realized that being fired from the library was not the end, but the beginning of a journey that was truly important. A year later, Naomi stood on the doorstep of her first library, organized by the Steph Curry Foundation. It was one of dozens of such places that had sprung up through her efforts. Inside, it was bustling with activity. Children leafed through books, teens discussed their creative projects, and parents sat at round tables planning for upcoming events. Naomi watched with a sense of pride. What had once seemed like a dream was now a reality. Her programs did more than just give access to books. They became a catalyst for change. Teens who had previously avoided public speaking were now reading their stories in front of audiences. Many of them said it was Naomi's books that helped them believe in themselves. One of them, 16-year-old Michael, who used to be afraid to take the floor at school, was now preparing for a city storytelling contest. "If it wasn't for your program, I would never have decided to do this," he told Naomi after the class. "You taught me that my voice matters." Her book was an important step too. A collection of short stories called Words That Change Lives quickly resonated with readers. In it, Naomi shared her personal experiences as well as the stories of the children she met. The book received rave reviews for the sincerity and inspiration it provided. But Naomi's most unexpected moment was the invitation to return to her old library as a guest of honor. She accepted, even though she was worried about how she would be greeted. On the day of her visit, the library was decorated with banners and balloons. Naomi had brought boxes of books for children and teens, each with her autograph and a short motivational text. When she walked in, visitors who knew her from before greeted her with applause. Even Ms. Clark, stern and reserved, approached her with a smile. "Naomi," she said, extending her hand, "I have to admit, you have done what we here could only dream of. You have changed the lives of many, and I am proud that you were once part of our team." Naomi accepted her words with gratitude. She held a meeting with the children, read an excerpt from her book, and talked about the importance of always believing in your dreams. As she left the library in the evening, she turned around and looked at the building. This place was the beginning of her journey, and now she saw it not as a part of the past, but as a starting point to the future. Naomi's story shows that standing up for your values, even in the face of adversity, can be the beginning of something great. Her journey proved that every action, even a simple word or sincere support, can change a person's life and give them hope for a better future.